The crystalline dome of the Galactic Council's judgment chamber stretched beyond sight, its impossible geometry defying every law of physics humanity thought they understood. Ambassador David Ross stood at the chamber's center, surrounded by a sea of alien faces arranged in ascending rings that seemed to spiral upward into infinity. Above him, hundreds of species from across the galaxy watched with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. The Vorthak War Commander, General Crix, leaned forward from his elevated position, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. His voice boomed through universal translators, each word dripping with contempt. "Human delegation, you stand accused of developing weapons of mass destruction in direct violation of galactic law. Your species has been classified as Level 2 civilization, yet intelligence reports indicate you possess nuclear arsenals and antimatter research facilities." The chamber erupted in chittering, rumbling, and harmonious tones as representatives from dozens of species voiced their agreement. The evidence was damning. Earth's military capabilities had been catalogued with surgical precision. Every secret base and hidden research facility exposed for the Council to judge. Ross remained perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. He had expected this moment for months, ever since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization 3 years ago. What the aliens didn't know was that first contact hadn't been their choice. Humanity had reached out to them. "The penalty for such violations is clear," General Crix continued, his 4 eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. "Immediate surrender of your homeworld sovereignty, or complete extinction of your species. These are the only options available to primitives who dare to threaten galactic peace." Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembled aliens. They had seen this play out before with dozens of other species. Young civilizations that grew too ambitious, developed weapons beyond their maturity level, and faced the Council's justice. It was a familiar routine that always ended the same way. But Ambassador Ross smiled. The expression was so unexpected, so completely inappropriate for the situation, that it sent visible waves of confusion through the nearest alien observers. Several insectoid representatives clicked their mandibles nervously, while the crystalline beings from the outer rim flickered with uncertain light patterns. "General Crix," Ross said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber without any technological amplification. "Before you pass judgment on humanity, perhaps I should ask you a simple question." He reached into his jacket and withdrew what appeared to be a standard diplomatic tablet. The device looked ordinary enough, though several alien security officers tensed at the unexpected movement. "This judgment chamber," Ross continued, "exists in a pocket dimension accessible only through quantum-encrypted coordinates that change every microsecond. The location protocol requires clearance codes from at least 7 council members, and the dimensional anchor itself is protected by technology your best scientists claim is theoretically impossible to penetrate." General Crix's mandibles clicked impatiently. "Your point, human?" Ross activated his tablet, and suddenly the air around him shimmered with holographic displays. Star charts materialized throughout the chamber, showing detailed tactical assessments of every major galactic civilization, their weaknesses catalogued with terrifying precision. "My point," Ross said, "is that we've been here before." The displays shifted, revealing archived footage from within this very chamber. But the recordings were impossible. They showed council sessions from centuries past, classified meetings that had been secured against any form of surveillance, deliberations that should have been completely private. 73 years ago, Ross narrated as the images played, this chamber voted to exterminate the Kalari species for developing biotechnology weapons. 41 years ago, you condemned the Zinthari for creating artificial intelligence. 18 years ago, the Helian Syndicate faced extinction for their experiments with dark matter manipulation. Each image was perfect, every detail recorded with clarity that suggested the presence of advanced surveillance technology that the Council's own sensors had never detected. How? General Crix's voice had lost its confident tone. "Because we built this place," Ross replied simply. The chamber fell into absolute silence. The claim was so absurd that many aliens struggled to process it. The judgment chamber was ancient, constructed by the founding members of the Galactic Council eons before humanity had even developed written language. Ross gestured, and the holographic displays changed again. This time they showed construction schematics, detailed engineering plans that revealed the chamber's impossible architecture from the inside out. Every quantum anchor, every dimensional stabilizer, every seemingly alien technology was labeled with notations in Earth languages that predated human spaceflight. The Galactic Council has served its purpose admirably, Ross continued. For 12,000 years it has maintained order among younger species, preventing destructive conflicts and guiding technological development. But it was never intended as humanity's judge. Dr. Elena Martinez materialized beside Ross, appearing without any visible means of transport, as if she had stepped through the fabric of space itself. Her sudden presence caused panic among the alien security forces, who reached for weapons that suddenly refused to function. Esteemed council members, Dr. Martinez said with perfect diplomatic courtesy, allow me to clarify our position. Humanity has been observing galactic civilization since before your oldest records begin. Every species in this chamber exists because we permitted it. Every major decision your council has made was subtly influenced to maintain stability and encourage growth. She gestured to the displays, which now showed a comprehensive timeline of galactic history. But this version included details that had never been recorded officially, showing human intervention in thousands of crucial moments throughout the millennia. The Vorthak expansion was limited to prevent them from overwhelming their neighbors. The Xanthari military development was guided away from weapons that would have destabilized entire star systems. Even the formation of this council itself was the result of careful, psychological manipulation designed to create a governing body that would foster cooperation rather than conquest. General Crix's voice shook with a mixture of rage and fear. Lies. Our civilization is millions of years old. We evolved independently, conquered our enemies through strength and cunning. Ross smiled again, and this time the expression carried depths of knowledge that made looking at him directly uncomfortable. General, your people evolved on a world that was terraformed by automated systems humanity deployed 30 million years ago. Your entire genetic line exists because we guided asteroid impacts away from your planet during its critical development period. Your military technology is based on principles we embedded in quantum fluctuations that your scientists discovered and mistook for natural phenomena. The implications hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. Everything they thought they knew about their own history, their own achievements, was being rewritten in real time. Dr. Martinez continued with clinical precision. Every species in this chamber has been carefully cultivated for specific purposes within a larger galactic ecosystem. The Helians provide economic stability through their natural aptitude for trade. The Xanthari serve as a military deterrent against external threats. The crystalline beings maintain communication networks across impossible distances. And us? General Crix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Vorthak were designed to serve as enforcers, Ross replied. Your aggressive nature and military prowess made you ideal for maintaining order among more peaceful species. But recent developments suggest you may have outlived your usefulness. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the chamber, alien representatives began to understand that they weren't witnesses to humanity's judgment, but to their own. The trial was over before it began, Ross said as reality began to shift around them. We are not the defendants here. We are the judges, and some of you have been found wanting. As the first Vorthak worlds began disappearing from existence itself, the true war finally began. The bridge of the Vorthak flagship Crimson Destroyer vibrated with barely contained fury as General Crix paced between tactical stations. 3 days had passed since the impossible confrontation in the council chamber, and his forces were still struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. The human fleets that had appeared around every Vorthak world had simply vanished without explanation, leaving no trace on sensors, no quantum signatures, nothing but the memory of their overwhelming presence. Status report, Crix demanded, his four eyes burning with the need for answers. Commander Vex approached with visible reluctance. Sir, we've received responses from all sector commands. The human vessels appeared simultaneously across 47 star systems, remained visible for exactly 17 minutes, then disappeared completely. Our best scientists cannot explain how they achieved such coordination across impossible distances. What about their message? Crix's mandibles clicked with agitation. The same transmission was broadcast to every Vorthak installation simultaneously. Vex replied, 3 words: prepare for war. Despite the mysterious circumstances surrounding the human demonstration, Crix felt his confidence returning. The Vorthak had conquered 17 sectors through superior firepower and warrior culture. Their plasma cannon technology could crack planetary crusts, and their military doctrine had been refined through countless successful campaigns. Whatever tricks the humans possessed, they would learn that there was no substitute for raw military might. Deploy the 7th Fleet to Earth's coordinates, Crix ordered. If these humans want war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. His confidence lasted exactly 4 hours and 27 minutes. The attack began at the Vorthak mining colony of Jektar Prime, a heavily fortified outpost that served as a crucial supply hub for the Empire's war machine. Captain Korvek commanded the station's defenses from the central control tower, surrounded by enough firepower to reduce an entire fleet to quantum debris. The first sign of trouble was subtle. The quantum detection grid simply stopped reporting contacts. Not destroyed, not damaged, just inactive, as if someone had reached into the heart of advanced technology and switched it off. Engineering, Korvek barked into his communicator. Why are our sensors offline? Sir, they're not offline, came the confused reply. All systems show green across the board. The equipment is functioning perfectly. It's just not detecting anything. Korvek was still processing this impossibility when his tactical officer gasped and pointed at the main display. Captain, look at this. The screen showed the station's internal layout, but something was wrong. Energy signatures were appearing inside the facility itself, not approaching from space but materializing within the corridors, hangars, and command centers as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Impossible, Korvek whispered. Nothing can penetrate our shields without a bar. His words were cut off as human soldiers appeared on the bridge itself. Not beamed in, not arriving through airlocks or transport tubes, simply stepping out of empty air as if they had always been there. Their weapons were unlike anything in the Vorthak arsenal. Sleek devices that hummed with barely contained energy. The Vorthak warriors, bred for combat and trained from birth for violence, responded with their characteristic fury. Plasma rifles discharged with devastating force, filling the bridge with superheated energy that should have vaporized any organic being. The humans simply stood there, as the plasma bolts passed harmlessly through them. Energy. Weapons detected, one of the human soldiers said in perfect Vorthak, her voice carrying no emotion as she raised her weapon, compensating for local physics parameters. The blast that followed was unlike anything Korvek had ever experienced. Instead of the familiar heat and light of plasma discharge, this weapon seemed to reach into his body and simply turn off the biological processes that kept him alive. Around the bridge, his officers collapsed not from injuries but from the sudden failure of organs that had forgotten how to function. Similar scenes played out across Vorthak space with terrifying precision. Naval bases found their mighty plasma cannons producing nothing but harmless light shows. Fortress worlds discovered their shields had become transparent barriers that offered no more protection than paper. Most disturbing of all, Vorthak weapons technology simply stopped working whenever human forces were present. General Crix received the reports with growing horror. 17 military installations had fallen in the span of 2 hours, not through superior firepower, but through the complete inability of Vorthak technology to function properly. It was as if the humans possessed an understanding of physics so advanced that they could selectively edit the laws of reality. Sir, his tactical officer reported with a trembling voice, the humans aren't just defeating our forces. They're demonstrating complete mastery over the fundamental forces we use for everything. Our plasma technology, our shields, even our basic power generation systems work only when they allow it. The implications were staggering. The Vorthak military machine was built on technologies they thought they understood, but the humans were treating these same forces like children's toys. Every weapon, every defense, every piece of equipment that made the Vorthak Empire possible was apparently operating on principles that humanity could control at will. Crix was contemplating this nightmare when his flagship's communications array activated, without anyone touching the controls. A holographic display materialized in the center of the bridge, showing a human woman in a simple gray uniform. General Crix, she said with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. My name is Director Lisa Hayes, Earth Defense Intelligence. We need to talk. The woman looked ordinary enough, middle-aged, with graying hair and tired eyes. But there was something in her expression that suggested vast depths of knowledge and experience that made Crix's ancient warrior. Instincts scream warnings. Your forces have approximately 43 minutes before complete systemic failure, Hayes continued. I suggest you use that time to consider your options carefully. What do you want? Crix demanded, though his voice lacked the authority he intended. To explain the situation, Hayes replied. Your empire has served its purpose admirably for the past several centuries. The Vorthak provided necessary military pressure that encouraged other species to cooperate, rather than fight. Your aggressive expansion created the external threat that made the Galactic Council possible. She gestured, and the display showed a tactical overview of Vorthak space. Red indicators marked the locations where human forces had demonstrated their capabilities, but Crix realized with growing dread that these represented only a tiny fraction of their actual presence. However, Hayes continued, recent events have forced us to reconsider the value of maintaining your civilization. The Judgment Chamber incident demonstrated that the Vorthak no longer serve the galaxy's best interests. Your usefulness has ended. You're going to destroy us? Crix asked. Hayes smiled, and the expression was somehow more terrifying than any threat. Destroy? General, that would be wasteful. We're going to edit you out of existence. Every Vorthak who ever lived, every world you conquered, every ship you built will simply cease to have ever existed. The galaxy will continue exactly as it was, except the Vorthak Empire will become nothing more than a cautionary tale that nobody quite remembers. The tactical display around them began to change, showing Vorthak territory shrinking in real time, as star systems simply disappeared from the map, not destroyed by weapons, not conquered by enemy forces, but erased from reality itself as if they had never been. 41 minutes remaining, Hayes said calmly, as the countdown to non-existence continued. General Crix, warrior of 1,000 battles and conqueror of 17 sectors, fell to his knees as he watched his entire civilization being gently removed from the timeline by forces he couldn't even comprehend. The war he had declared expecting easy victory had revealed that the Vorthak Empire had never been hunters at all. They had been livestock, carefully managed by shepherds who had finally decided it was time for culling. Around him, reality continued to unravel as humanity demonstrated that some battles are won, not through superior firepower, but through the terrifying realization that the enemy was never fighting on the same level at all. Director Lisa Hayes materialized on the bridge of the Crimson Destroyer without fanfare, appearing beside General Crix's command chair as if she had always been part of the ship's crew. The Vorthak warriors reached for weapons that were no longer there, their plasma rifles having simply ceased to exist in the same casual way that physics seemed to bend around human presence. Please, General, Hayes said with the patient tone of a teacher addressing a difficult student, sit down. We have much to discuss and very little time to waste on posturing. Crix remained standing, his 4 eyes burning with desperate fury. Everything he had built, everything his people had achieved was being systematically erased from existence. What are you? He demanded. What technology allows such violations of natural law? Hayes moved to the bridge's central holographic display, which activated at her approach without any input from the Vorthak crew. The star map that appeared was wrong in every possible way. Instead of the familiar territories of known galactic civilization, vast regions of space showed structures and energy signatures that belonged to no known species. That's the wrong question, General, Hayes replied calmly. The right question is, what did you think you were declaring war against? The map zoomed out, revealing a perspective of the galaxy that no alien civilization had ever seen. Enormous constructs dwarfed entire solar systems, connected by networks of energy that pulsed with purpose across impossible distances. At the heart of it all sat structures so massive they made gas giants look like pebbles, artificial intelligences that had been calculating galactic policy for longer than most species had existed. This is the neural web, Hayes explained, a galaxy-spanning network that allows us to monitor and guide the development of younger civilizations. Every star system you've ever seen, every species you've encountered, every technological development in galactic history has been carefully orchestrated from these central nodes. Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in Vorthak physiology. Impossible, Our sensors would have detected constructions of such magnitude. Your sensors see exactly what we program them to see, Hayes replied with matter-of-fact precision. Every quantum processor more advanced than basic electronics contains human-manufactured components. We've been observing galactic development through your own instruments for millennia. She gestured, and the display shifted to show the hidden history of Vorthak civilization, their first tentative steps into space, their development of plasma technology, their conquest of neighboring systems. But now Crix could see the subtle influences that had shaped every major event. Technological discoveries that had arrived at precisely the right moments. Conflicts that had ended just before they could spiral into extinction-level wars. The Kalari rebellion that haunts your nightmares, Hayes said, noting Crix's expression of recognition. We provided just enough advanced weaponry to make their resistance credible without allowing them to actually defeat you. The goal was to teach your species about the costs of genocide without permitting actual genocide. But the Council, Crix struggled to process the implications. The Galactic Council is a training exercise, Hayes interrupted. A carefully designed simulation that allows younger species to practice diplomacy and cooperation in a controlled environment. Every major decision has been subtly guided to prevent catastrophic mistakes while fostering growth. The holographic display now showed real-time footage from across the galaxy. Not just Vorthak space, but every council member's territory. Everywhere the same impossible demonstrations were taking place. Human forces appearing with casual disregard for physics, alien technology failing on command, entire civilizations suddenly understanding that their independence had always been an illusion. You declared war on what you thought was a primitive, single-world civilization, Hayes continued. Instead, you attacked the galaxy's immune system. We've decided that the Vorthak experiment has run its course. General Crix felt something he had never experienced in decades of warfare, the complete certainty of absolute defeat. What do you want? Surrender? Tribute? Our homeworld? General, Hayes said with the patience of someone explaining a simple concept to a child, you're thinking too small. This isn't about conquest or territory. This is about editing history itself. The tactical display shifted to show Vorthak space in real time. But the view was wrong. Star systems were disappearing, not destroyed by weapons but simply ceasing to exist. Vorthak colonies, military bases, entire populated worlds were being systematically removed from reality. We're not killing your people, Hayes explained as Crix watched his empire evaporate. We're removing them from the timeline. Every Vorthak who ever lived, every ship you built, every world you conquered is being edited out of existence. The galaxy will continue exactly as before, except the Vorthak Empire will never have existed. That's impossible, Crix whispered. But even as he spoke, he could feel his own memories becoming uncertain. The edges of his perception were growing fuzzy as reality restructured itself around him. Impossible is a limitation that applies to younger species, Hayes replied. Humanity transcended such constraints long ago. We've been the caretakers of this galaxy since before your oldest civilizations developed written language. As the last Vorthak worlds faded from the display, General Crix realized that he was becoming translucent. His very substance beginning to unravel along with everything his people had ever accomplished. But Hayes raised her hand, and suddenly he solidified again while everything else continued to dissolve. However, she said, every edit requires documentation. Someone must remember what was removed, to serve as a warning to species that might make similar mistakes. Crix felt himself stabilizing while his crew, his ship, his entire civilization continued to fade into quantum foam. Soon he stood alone in a space that was becoming increasingly dreamlike, facing a human who seemed less like a person and more like a force of nature. Congratulations, General, Hayes said as the last traces of Vorthak civilization vanished. You are now the sole surviving member of your species. Your new assignment is to serve as humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Council, ensuring that the lesson of Vorthak extinction is never forgotten. The implications hit him like a physical blow. He would exist forever as a living reminder of what happened to species that challenged humanity's carefully maintained order. Not dead, not conquered, but transformed into a cautionary tale that would haunt the galaxy for millennia. Why? Crix asked as reality finished restructuring itself around them. Hayes considered the question with the detached interest of a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Because the galaxy is approaching a critical transition phase. For 12,000 years, we've maintained the fiction that your species are independent actors, making your own choices. This comfortable illusion has served its purpose. But recent developments suggest it's time for a more direct approach, she gestured, and the space around them transformed into a perfect replica of the Galactic Council chamber. But this version was empty except for a single chair in the observer section, marked with symbols that designated it as the seat for extinct species. Your new role is to help other civilizations understand their place in the larger order, Hayes explained. When they grow too ambitious, too aggressive, too dangerous to galactic stability, you will be there to remind them what happened to the last species that forgot its proper role. As the weight of eternal existence as humanity's object lesson settled over him, General Crix understood with perfect clarity that the war had never been between equals. It had been between a child playing with toys and adults who had finally lost patience with destructive games. The Vorthak Empire was gone as if it had never existed. But its memory would live on forever in the form of a single witness, condemned to spend eternity explaining to other species why challenging humanity's vision of galactic order was the last mistake they would ever make. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council that convened mere hours after the Vorthak extinction, the Great Chamber hummed with terror rather than its usual confident authority. Representatives from hundreds of species huddled in their assigned sections, speaking in hushed tones about events that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Chancellor Zorix of the Helian Syndicate stood at the central podium, his usually steady composure cracking under the weight of impossible revelations. Fellow council members, his translated voice echoed through the chamber. We face a crisis that exceeds all our preparation and understanding. In the span of 18 hours, an entire Tier 4 civilization has been removed from existence itself. The murmurs that rippled through the assembly carried notes of panic. Many species retained only fragmentary memories of the Vorthak Empire, ghostly recollections of a military power that had once commanded 47 star systems. Only the highest-ranking officials could remember them clearly, and even those memories felt dreamlike and uncertain. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that defy our classification systems entirely, Zorix continued. They possess technology that can manipulate causality, rewrite physics at will, and edit the fundamental structure of reality. We are no longer dealing with a Level 2 civilization or even a Level 6. They represent something beyond our ability to categorize. From the upper tiers, Admiral Korath of the Xanthari Republic spoke with military precision, despite the fear evident in his voice. Chancellor, our combined fleets report the same phenomena across all sectors. Human forces appear and disappear without warning. Our weapons refuse to function in their presence, and our most advanced technology operates only when they permit it. In the section reserved for extinct species, General Crix sat in isolated silence. His presence was a constant reminder of humanity's power and their willingness to use it. The sole survivor of an entire civilization, transformed into a living cautionary tale, he watched the proceedings with the hollow expression of someone who had seen the true face of galactic power. What are our options? Asked Representative Yeth of the Crystalline Collective, her harmonic voice carrying overtones of desperation. How do we negotiate with beings who can simply erase us from history? Chancellor Zorix activated the chamber's communication array. Director Hayes, we know you're monitoring these proceedings. The council formally requests an audience. The response was immediate. Director Hayes materialized in the chamber's center, but this time she wasn't alone. Beside her stood Dr. Marcus Webb, an elderly human whose unremarkable appearance somehow conveyed the weight of vast experience, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a younger woman whose eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge that made direct eye contact uncomfortable. Esteemed council members, Hayes said with diplomatic courtesy, we appreciate your request for dialogue. However, we must first address a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of this relationship. Dr. Webb stepped forward, his voice carrying the patient authority of someone accustomed to teaching difficult concepts. You continue to speak as if this were a negotiation between equals. This perspective, while understandable, is fundamentally incorrect. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing the galaxy from a perspective no alien civilization had ever seen. The familiar territories of known space were revealed as tiny islands in an ocean of human infrastructure. Massive constructs connected star systems across impossible distances and everywhere, the subtle evidence of careful management and control. You exist because we have permitted your existence, Dr. Webb continued. Every technological breakthrough your species have achieved, every territorial expansion, every diplomatic solution to regional conflicts has been guided by human intervention. The Galactic Council itself was established as a training ground where younger species could learn cooperation under carefully controlled conditions. Dr. Rodriguez took over, her analytical tone making several delegates unconsciously lean away. Our records show that this galaxy has been under human administration for approximately 14,000 years. During that time, we have prevented 17 extinction-level events, guided the development of 43 separate civilizations, and maintained peace through subtle influence rather than direct control. She gestured, and the displays showed the hidden history of galactic civilization, wars that had ended at precisely the right moments, technological discoveries that had arrived when they were most needed, even natural disasters that had been quietly redirected to prevent catastrophic damage. The Vorthak extinction became necessary because they had reached a technological threshold that threatened this carefully maintained balance, Rodriguez explained. Their aggressive expansion and weapons development posed unacceptable risks to galactic stability. Chancellor Zorix's voice cracked as he tried to maintain diplomatic protocol. Then what is our purpose? Are we merely experiments in your laboratory? Hayes stepped forward, her expression softening slightly. You are our children, Chancellor. Difficult children who are slowly learning to become something greater than your individual species. The intervention against the Vorthak was necessary because they refused to mature beyond their aggressive programming. But now, Dr. Webb interjected, humanity faces a critical decision point. For 14 millennia, we've maintained the fiction that you are independent actors shaping your own destinies. This comfortable illusion has served its purpose in fostering growth and development. However, recent events suggest it may be time for a more direct relationship. The implications sent visible waves of panic through the assembled delegates. They were being told that childhood was ending, that the protective barriers that had allowed them to feel important and autonomous were about to be removed. Admiral Koreth stood with military bearing despite his obvious fear. What are our choices, Director Hayes? What terms do you offer? Hayes smiled, but the expression carried undertones that made General Crick shudder with recognition. The choice is quite simple, Admiral. You can continue to grow and develop under humanity's guidance, with our role becoming more apparent but still supportive. Your species will retain their autonomy within carefully defined parameters, and the galaxy will remain stable and prosperous. And the alternative? Chancellor Zorix asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Dr. Rodriguez responded with clinical precision. The alternative is editing. Species that cannot adapt to the new paradigm, that insist on pursuing dangerous technologies or aggressive expansion beyond acceptable limits, will be removed from the timeline, not destroyed but made to have never existed. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the delegates absorbed the magnitude of their situation. They were being offered a choice between guided evolution and retroactive extinction. General Crix spoke from his isolated position, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. Choose carefully, fellow beings. I am the only one who remembers what defiance costs. Existence as a cautionary tale is not preferable to existence as willing students. Hayes nodded approvingly at Crix's words. The General speaks from unique experience. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can embrace this transition to a new phase of development, or you can join the Vorthak in the realm of cautionary tales that nobody quite remembers. As the delegates began to comprehend that they were not negotiating terms of surrender but rather accepting the end of their illusion of independence, Dr. Webb prepared to deliver humanity's final conditions. The children of the galaxy were about to learn that growing up meant accepting guidance from parents who had been watching over them since the beginning of their civilizations. The war the Vorthak had declared expecting. Victory had ended with humanity offering the entire galaxy a choice. Evolve under careful supervision, or be quietly removed from existence to make room for species that could learn the fundamental lesson of cosmic citizenship. 6 months after what galactic historians would carefully record as the Great Transition, the council chamber had been transformed into something entirely new. The old hierarchical structure with its imposing tiers and elevated positions had been replaced by a circular amphitheater, where representatives from 300 species sat as equals. The change was symbolic but profound, representing the shift from competitive independence to cooperative development under humanity's careful guidance. Ambassador David Ross, who had triggered the crisis with his impossible knowledge of Council secrets, now served as humanity's primary liaison to the new galactic order. He watched with quiet satisfaction as Chancellor Zorix called the Assembly to order, noting how much more efficiently the Council operated when freed from the pretense of absolute sovereignty. Fellow members of the Galactic Cooperative, Zorix announced, using the new designation that had replaced the old Council structure, today marks the completion of the integration protocol. All member species have successfully adapted their governmental and technological frameworks to align with the Galactic Stability Accords. The accords themselves represented a masterpiece of diplomatic engineering. On the surface, they appeared to be voluntary agreements that member species had developed through careful negotiation. In reality, every clause had been subtly influenced by human psychologists who understood exactly how to guide different alien mentalities toward desired conclusions. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now holding the title of Director of Civilizational Development, rose to address the Assembly. Her role had evolved from psychological analyst to something resembling a galactic guidance counselor, helping species navigate their transition from imagined independence to accepted cooperation. The integration process has exceeded our most optimistic projections, Rodriguez reported. Economic productivity across all sectors has increased by an average of 28%. Interspecies conflicts have decreased by 92%. Most significantly, technological development is proceeding along optimal trajectories that minimize existential risks, while maximizing beneficial applications. In the section reserved for historical observers, General Crix nodded approvingly. His role as the sole survivor of an extinct species had evolved into something resembling a consulting position. Younger species often sought his advice on how to avoid the fate that had befallen the Vorthak Empire, and he had become unexpectedly effective at guiding aggressive civilizations toward more cooperative approaches. The success stories were remarkable. The Xanthari Republic had redirected their military research toward defensive technologies and disaster response capabilities. The Helian Syndicate had transformed their trade networks into a galaxy-spanning distribution system that eliminated resource scarcity for member species. Even the crystalline beings had found new purpose in maintaining communication networks that connected the most distant regions of human-administered space. However, Dr. Rodriguez continued, it's important to acknowledge that not all species have adapted successfully to the new paradigm. 17 civilizations have required additional guidance through the editing process. The euphemism was understood by everyone present. 17 species had been quietly removed from existence for refusing to abandon dangerous technologies or aggressive expansion policies. Their absence was felt only as a vague sense that the galaxy was somehow more peaceful than it had been, though few could articulate exactly why. Ambassador Ross stood to address the Assembly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who spoke for the galaxy's true administrators. Directors Rodriguez and Webb have raised important points about our collective progress. But today I want to discuss the question that many of you have been considering privately. What comes next? The assembled delegates leaned forward with genuine interest. They had grown comfortable with their new reality, accepting human guidance in exchange for unprecedented peace and prosperity. But uncertainty about the future remained a source of both hope and anxiety among the more thoughtful species. For 14,000 years, Ross continued, humanity has served as this galaxy's caretakers, guiding your development from behind the scenes. Recent events have made our role explicit rather than hidden, but that was always intended as a transitional phase. Dr. Marcus Webb materialized beside Ross through his characteristic quantum emergence, a sight that no longer caused panic among the alien representatives. His role had evolved into something resembling a cosmic professor, teaching fundamental principles of galactic citizenship to species that were finally ready to understand them. The galaxy is approaching what we call the maturation threshold, Webb explained with the patience of someone who had guided the development of countless civilizations. The point at which supervised development transitions to genuine independence within a larger cosmic community. Admiral Korath of the Xanthari Republic raised a tentative appendage. Director Webb, Are you saying that humanity will eventually withdraw from galactic affairs? Not withdraw, Webb corrected gently. Graduate. Humanity's role will shift from active management to advisory consultation. But this transition requires demonstration that you collectively possess the wisdom necessary for true cosmic citizenship. The chamber buzzed with a mixture of excitement and concern. After months of accepting human guidance, the prospect of genuine autonomy was both thrilling and terrifying. Director Hayes joined her colleagues through her own quantum manifestation, her presence now associated with stability and reassurance, rather than the terror she had once inspired. The requirements for graduation are straightforward but demanding, she explained. First, no species may develop weapons capable of stellar destruction without unanimous cooperative approval. Second, all major technological breakthroughs must be shared through the Galactic Information Network. Third, and most critically, you must demonstrate consistent ability to resolve conflicts through diplomacy and cooperation, rather than force, she gestured, and the chamber's displays showed star maps of neighboring galactic regions, vast spiral arms filled with stars that had never known human influence, civilizations that were developing according to their own chaotic patterns without any guiding intelligence. Beyond our current region, Hayes continued, there are other galaxies facing the same developmental challenges you once struggled with. Humanity's primary focus is shifting toward those broader responsibilities, but we will not abandon a mature galactic civilization to potential regression. Chancellor Zorix raised a trembling appendage, his voice carrying a mixture of hope and fear. Director Hayes, what happens if we fail these tests? What if some species proves unable to maintain the cooperative standards you've established? Hayes's smile was gentle but carried undertones that made General Crix reflexively shudder. Then those species will be edited from the timeline and will work with their successors. But our sociological models suggest a 96% probability of success. You've all demonstrated remarkable adaptability during the transition period. Dr. Rodriguez added with her characteristic analytical precision. The elegant aspect of this approach is that failure becomes statistically impossible. Any species genuinely incapable of coexisting peacefully within galactic civilization simply ceases to have existed. The remaining species, by mathematical necessity, are those capable of achieving true cosmic citizenship. The implications settled over the chamber like a warm blanket. They were being offered genuine independence with the ultimate safety net, that any truly catastrophic mistakes would be retroactively prevented. General Crix spoke from his observer position, his voice carrying the weight of unique experience. Fellow beings, I have seen what lies beyond the boundaries of acceptable development. I encourage you to embrace this opportunity with enthusiasm. True autonomy within reasonable constraints is infinitely preferable to the alternative. As the session concluded, and delegates began planning their species' preparation for the maturation assessments, Ross remained behind with his human colleagues. They had successfully transformed a galaxy of competitive children into a cooperative family of developing civilizations. Conservative estimate for full graduation? Ross asked. 200 standard years, Webb replied. Optimistic projection 75. Either timeline allows us to complete diplomatic contact with the Andromeda Galaxy while maintaining minimal supervision here. Rodriguez consulted her ever-present data analysis tools. Psychological profiles suggest that 71% of current species will achieve independent status within the first century. The remainder will require additional guidance or, in extreme cases, replacement through controlled editing. Hayes nodded with deep satisfaction. Then humanity's mission in this galaxy approaches successful completion. The member species will either learn to govern themselves responsibly within cosmic law, or they will be replaced by civilizations that can. Either outcome serves the broader purpose of establishing sustainable galactic civilization. As the human delegation prepared to depart through their quantum transportation network, the chamber's lights dimmed to signal the session's end. But for the first time in galactic history, the approaching darkness held promise rather than uncertainty.